There are some rules in a chess game that we all know. We all know we have to develop pieces. We don't have to give up strong piece for weak piece. And we all know that what is a good knight, bad bishop, good bishop. But there are some more rules, and for some reason, a lot of authors of the books and tapes, they fail to explain um, about piece coordination more than they did. What I mean by that, piece coordination, it's the most important. I think it's the most important tool once you learned the ABC of chess, how to coordinate pieces. Pieces have to work together, and don't anybody underestimate the power of combined effort of pieces. When pieces work together, they double, sometimes even triple their value. Well, they increase the value of their own value, and that's very important. And that's important in attack, in defense, in positional play, in tactical play, and everywhere. So that's what I want. I'm going to try to explain how the top players, how do they think. Now, they don't think about doing this. They do it subconsciously. So they know this piece belongs here, this piece belongs here. It's like their formula. It's like we don't think how much 2 times 3 or 2 plus 2. So they know it. They know how pieces have to work. How about however, less experienced people, they said, well, let's just develop this there. And when they play on one side of the board, that's when a lot of authors in a lot of books, they say, oh, you have to be consistent. That's 100% truth. But consistency means if your pieces are coordinated, have coordinated effort. Now, I'm describing what consistency means. When your pieces have coordinated effort on one side of the board, we cannot play different plan on the other side of the board because pieces are not coordinated there. Pieces coordinated in one area, and you have to be logically you have to pick where they have to coordinate, where you have more chances and your pieces are superior on that part of the board comparing to your opponent's pieces. This is very, very important. This is the vital part of the game, and there is no way you can underestimate it. And if you learn, and that goes, actually, this rule goes for everybody. If you master how to have your pieces coordinated the best way, this rule goes from players rated maybe 1,000 to 1,100 all the way to 2,800. Well, but 20 difference is they have the same rule, but they know it. So they still have room to improve there because, well, they know this. For example, there is a rule we know. Rule says that in the end game, rook and bishop normally is better than rook and knight. And we understand that, but also we know the queen and knight better than queen and bishop. And why do I have to follow this rule if I don't understand why? Because queen and knight, they coordinate better because knight can go to squares, queen cannot go from certain positions. But queen and bishop are not as strong because queen and bishop go the same way. Bishop goes diagonally, so does the queen. So coordinated effort is very important. If you think about it, it will make a lot of sense. And that's why when you play game, that's what you have to be concentrating for. First two games I want to discuss, they were played by former world champion Boris Spassky. Now, Boris Spassky was known to play he loved to attack and he played very active position. Well, but that does not, whether you can play this, it does not depend on your will to play so. He was master of playing very dynamic chess, and he had great ability to coordinate his pieces. They work together as a team. And next couple of examples are showing it clearly. This he played against in Canadian Open in 1971 against Derek Banks. E4, D5, ED, Knight F6. I don't want to make much emphasis on the openings, but we just go through the openings very quick because that's not our purpose. Bishop B5, Bishop D7, Bishop C4, Bishop G4, F3, and Bishop F5. Knight C3, Knight BD7. Well, the best move according to theory is G4, but in the game Spassky played after Knight BD7, Knight E2, Knight B6, D3, Knight F takes D5. Now, black got their pawns back, but they are slightly behind, maybe in development. Knight takes D5. Knight takes D5. Knight G3 by white. Queen D7. And white castled. Now, next move is played by black. I consider it is very, very bad move. Black played H5. And I am strongly suggesting anyone not to play this move. Move like this when you did not complete your development. Your bishop on F8, you don't know where you're going to castle, your rook on H8 and A8, and you cannot go H5. What are you going to do? You're going to go H4, H3 and checkmate black king? That works only in movies, in fairy tales. But this is a really, really bad move. H5, D4. Now black castles. White plays bishop B3. White wants to go C4. After bishop B3, H4, knight E4. And now black decides for some reason to continue development. For some reason it's more, it's like sarcastic way, but what is H5 and H4 has to do with normal development. Okay, after E6, Queen E2, and after, well, in this position, when white played Queen E2, white has a plan of going C4 and bishop E3 and attack on the queen side. Black played F6, also unclear what is it for in this F6. C4, knight B6, actually this was position. F6, C4, knight B6 and bishop E3. You see that white perfectly developed, and black, they don't know where to put the bishop on F8, they don't know what to do with H-pawn, because H-pawn and rook, these are two pieces practically are aiming on white's king, and that's not enough. It's not even a piece, it's a pawn. And on H3, white can simply go G3 or G4. And black is very far from creating any threats on the king side. So bishop e7 was played, rook fd1. You see, great attacking players, people that like initiative, you will never see them go h4, g4, and making psychotic attempt like h4. In order to be successful in some attack, you have to have enough firepower aiming on opponent's position. And after rook f2 d1, white is intending to play rook a to c1, and they have, if you can tell, knight may go to c5, so knight is very close to black's king position. Bishop is aiming also on diagonal. This bishop is standing well, also prepared, and not to mention two rooks on c1 and d1. They are very well positioned for attack. And black has no pieces coordinated on the king side for for any action of this kind. So white didn't play rook a to c1, but after rook f2 d1, black played queen e8, bishop f2, and there goes g5 for black. White played a4. Now, Spassky did not play rook ac1 because he plays a4. He doesn't know how the game will develop. Maybe he can use his rook on a file. So after a4, queen g6, h3. You see, black now realizes that white is going to go a5, d5, open position, and it's going to become very bad. Black is absolutely desperate because white's beautiful position of white's pieces. Black is absolutely desperate and played g4, h takes g, bishop takes e4. And this is actually, I have to tell you, very important point here. Frequently I have asked question, well, how would I know whether I should play this position with queens on the board or queens off the board? It's very simple here. In this case, if you take with a pawn, you have much more superior piece position. And if you go c5 followed by d5, you're going to have, or even c5 followed by c6 and queen a6, you have great opportunity of conducting very successful attack on opponent's king. You don't want to exchange queens in this position. However, even after exchanging queen, white has solid advantage, I think. But f takes e is correct decision. Knight d7. Now c5 was played. Practical threat is c6 or maybe d5, not to mention bishop takes e6. Black, in my opinion, is totally lost here. Knight f8, d5. c6 was not bad either. c6 was another very good attempt, and on b takes c, rook c1 followed by queen a6. But you cannot, of course, criticize d5 move. So d5 was played, rook g8, and now d6. That's the fine point of the game. After d6, c takes d, and rook takes d6. Why did white sacrifice this pawn? You see, as I mentioned, bishop aiming on queen side, queen aiming on queen side. So, and rook is coming to c1. Every white's piece coordinated on pressure on black's king. Meanwhile, queen on g6, rook on g8, knight on f8 are absolutely total spectators. And in this position, no one can see all the way through when you went there. But that's intuition says a ground rules of chess say when you have such a overpowered position, there should be a winning solution. After rook takes d6, rook ac1 check, king to d8, rook takes d6, bishop takes d6. Now it's just a matter of time when white will get black's king. So queen d1 was played. It's very concrete solution. And on king e7, logical conclusion of the domination of white's pieces. e5. That moves is absolute killer. Black must play bishop takes e5, because if pawn takes e5, after bishop takes h4, you can see that there is no way of getting out. If king goes on f7, bishop is hanging, and if king goes to d7, it stands on the file with the queen. So after simple queen f3, there is not much left to play. Threatening queen takes b7, and on e4 maybe queen c3, threatening queen c8 mate. Black's pieces are totally helpless. So bishop takes e5 was played. Now bishop c5 check. Everything else is forced. It's simple tactics, and the way Spassky won this game, it's not because he found this combination. There are multiple ways. So the easiest ways, what he did was bishop takes e6. You cannot play knight takes e6 because of queen d7 is a simply checkmate. So king takes e6 was played, queen b3 check, and on king d7, queen takes b7 check, and on king e6, rook d1, threatening queen c8 with a checkmate, or queen d5 a checkmate, queen d5 most probably, and after rook d1, queen takes g4, and after queen d5 check, black resigned, because on king f5, rook f1 check, black's king has to go to g file, and then black loses most of its material. So this was very well played game by Boris Spassky. But you see, the top players in the world, they they don't put great effort in this game, in the games like this, because they already know how pieces should coordinate, and they do not think whether to do that or not. They are thinking only what is the best way of coordinating the pieces, and they know how it should work. This was very, very good example. The next game I want to show you was played also by Boris Spassky against very well-known Romanian grandmaster at that point in 1967, Theodore Gitescu. Game was played in Holland. d4, knight f6, c4, c5, d5, e5. Now knight c3, d6. Again, we go through the opening very quickly. e4, bishop e7, knight f3, castles, bishop d3, knight d7, queen e2, knight e8, g4, starting activity on the king side, and also preventing black from future f5. g4, g6, bishop h6, knight g7, castle, knight f6. Black has some problems with space. After knight f6, h3, a6, rook d1 to g1, preparing the attack, bishop d7, knight d2. Now the purpose of move knight d2 is to go somehow f4. King h8, and after king h8, h4, knight g8. Of course, white must preserve this bishop. Go bishop e3, h5, g5. And now black plays bishop e8. Well, this is a lot different from the previous example. Here, white, you see no pawns or pieces are exchanged, and white has significant space advantage. Now, but they have to open position somewhere in order to create pressure on black's position. Now, black's king is very well protected. You see all black's pieces near the king, as opposed to previous example when black's king was totally unattended. So after bishop e8, black wants to go f6 just to make sure the pawn on g6 is protected. That's why bishop e8 was played. So after bishop e8, f4 was played and f5 by black. G takes f, knight takes f6, f takes e, d takes e. Well, let's evaluate this position. Position is clearly better for white, and there are several ways you can play this position. Player like Botvinnik or Petrosian would look at this position as a square on g5, possibly weak, better pawn structure for white, protected pass pawn on d, maybe weakness on e5, but Spassky sees this position differently. He wants to activate pieces maximally and create a powerful attack on black's king. So in this position, he played knight f3, aiming to g5, of course, knight g4, and here, instead of bishop g5, that's one of the moves that could have been made, or bishop d2, maintaining positional advantage, he simply played rook takes g4, h takes g, knight takes e5, knight h5, and now knight takes g4. Of course, white has sufficient compensation for exchange. They have two connected pass pawns, and after e5, black's king can be in danger. Knight g3 was played. Knight takes g4. Well, in this, but not too many people would allow knight g3 move. But interestingly played by Spassky, knight takes g4, knight g3, and queen g2, knight takes h1. And what's amazing that he is not even capturing this knight, because it can go anywhere. e5. What he relies on, two powerful bishops aiming on black's king two powerful pawns practically controlling whole center. Queen is very close, can be attacking black's position real quick, and he thought that black will be unable to defend the position, and he was right. So after e5, rook f7, queen takes h1. You see, white does not have to rush, because this piece is actively placed, and these pawns on e5 and d5, they are permanent factor. It's not temporary thing. It's long-term power, and black, they just cannot defend this position. After queen takes h1, rook h7, e6 was played. And quickly go to the end of the game, bishop g5, at some attempt to activate some pieces. Now if bishop takes g5, queen takes g5, and black has some counterplay. Actually, in this position, simply knight is hanging on g4, and if we take the queen, black takes queen, black may be okay. Of course, bishop takes g5 was not played. Simply queen e4, bishop takes e3, queen takes e3, queen to e7, knight e4. See, another piece is coming. Now knight will be going to f6 or g5, and the other knight on e5. This what is combined power of the pieces. Black is totally lost here. Rook takes h4, knight e to f6. Now black's king is totally smothered. Queen c7, bishop e4, stopping possible rook h1 check. It's not maybe that important of a move. So after bishop e4, queen a5, the last attempt for black somehow to take on a2 and maybe create perpetual check or something like this. After queen a5, queen g3, attacking rook, g5, knight takes e8, rook takes e8, and queen e5 check. Now this is black resigned actually here, and this is great example of the powerful coordination of the pieces. That wasn't direct attack on the king, not at any point. It was just coordinated effort of pieces to put enormous pressure on black's position. And here black resigned because on king g8, queen takes g5, and you see black loses everything here on king h8, queen f6. Oh, actually, queen takes h4 check possible, and if king f8, then white can win both black rooks. Queen f6 check, queen f7 check to take on e8, and then come back and take on e7 on h4 also. So this is great effort, and you know, some top players in the world, they kind of play these positions. They can play these positions in their sleep because they know how pieces should coordinate, and that's what makes them best players. Because we we can calculate 2-3 move combinations maybe better than them. We can play opening well too, but that's what they have. That's what distinguishes them between rest of the chess players. So in our effort to do this, to get to as close as possible to their way of thinking. Now, next game. This game was played by Garry Kasparov. No need to explain who that player is. In 1992, it was played in a simultaneous exhibition in Argentina. He was played against woman grandmaster at that point, top Argentinian players, a quite strong player. What I want to show you here is how from simple position, how piece coordination and activity of the pieces working together, how they prevail quickly over the pawn structure and other positional factors. So c4, e6, knight c3, and d5. And I will be explaining how should you think in those positions. d4, bishop e7, knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5, castle, e3, knight bd7. It's a quite boring opening position system. Queen c2, c6, rook d1, b6, bishop d3, h6, bishop h4, bishop b7, castling, and c5. We have standard type of position, which is most of the time in a draw, but not in this game. Well, one thing you should notice, c6 was played by black and then c5. So black somehow lost a tempo. White, in expense for that move, they put a rook on d1. Now, this gives white a slight possibility for initiative. What was played? Bishop g3. Now, bishop g3, let me explain the idea behind this move. This is a very strong move. Now, because if these pawns on c5, d5, and d4, c4 cannot be forever standing like this, pawns will be coming off the board. And important thing about it, that then we gonna get position where black has to develop their queen or rook, and that diagonal, g3, b8 diagonal, is gonna be crucial. Very, very important. C takes d was played, e takes d, d takes c, bishop takes c4, bishop takes f3, and g takes f. Now let's talk about this position. This position is very unusual. Black has perfect pawn structure, white has total disastrous pawn structure. Position is clearly better for white. Why? Black has no way of stopping white's d5. Bishop on g3 is very powerful, and white's piece is standing better. After d5 will come, after white plays d5, the pawns will disappear, and doubled pawn on f3 is totally insignificant, but white's activity is devastating here. So, and that's why we should evaluate this position as bad. So we should know what I'm trying to tell you is when white plays rook f1, you see both rooks in its center, bishop in its center, and this bishop aiming on king's side, queen may be coming here. So coordination of white's pieces and activity is a lot more important than pawn structure. So in this position, black realized that, and bishop on g3 is a very unpleasant piece for black because they cannot complete development. So black played knight h5. After d5, knight takes g3, rook is on f1, knight takes g3, H takes G, E takes D, knight takes D5, and as we expected, we got the position. As you can tell, there is no pawn damage anymore. No bad pawn structure for white. White's king will be standing perfectly on G2. Meanwhile, black has to get their rooks in play, and the pieces develop. Their pieces are very clumsy. Bishop d6 was played, and here we find some great example. We see how the good development, great development and piece coordination develops into devastating kingside attacks. Knight e3, simply attacking the bishop. Bishop c5. Now it's move knight f5. Now after knight f5, rook c8 has to be played. Rook c8 has to be played. Well, actually, in this position, the other option white had was bishop b5, which Kasparov didn't play. Of course, he would never miss this move, but the reason didn't play probably because of something like queen g5 or maybe even queen c7 with a possibility on g3 attack. But to tell you the truth, after bishop b5, it's also the only move, probably bishop takes e3 here. The possibilities of g3 square, g3 pawn being attacked, for example, after rook takes d7, queen g5, and you see there is some tactical threats for black. Now, threatening queen takes g3, queen takes b5, and black has a chance to defend. And again, I want to point here that on bishop b5, bishop takes e3, and queen g5 next move. So, but this is not about tactics. Moves like this, that's not what we want to emphasize on. I want to show you how the coordination of the pieces went in this game, coordinating play and attack by white. Well, knight f5, rook c8, and now a simple winning combination by white. Knight takes h6, g takes h, queen g6, king h8. Every move is forced. Queen takes h6. It's interesting why white takes this pawn to open the h file. King g8, queen g6, king h8, queen h5, king g7, queen g4 check, king h6, and rook takes d7. Rook takes d7, getting the piece back. Now they have the two extra pawns, and after queen e8, king g2, of course, black resigned. Rook h1 is unstoppable, and this is another. If you can tell here, well, we see how these pieces, I want you to notice here, how these pieces, this rook played in attack with this, it pins the knight, and also white later won this knight. This knight played for combination, and then even this rook cut into the game. How the combined effort of all these pieces, they working together, they created the great ground for the combination, and combination worked, it wasn't an accidental. I am sure, again, that when Kasparov played knight h6, of course it's the best move in this position. It's not the only way to play. I'm sure if he played simply king g2, followed by rook h1, black still has very, very difficult position. So, but this is, anyway, this is great example and a great play in a simplest position, and I will tell you, with the minimum effort for white. What did they do? Did they do anything ingenious? No, they didn't. They played very consistently and very simply placed their pieces on a best position. So another example. Now this one was also played by Garry Kasparov in 1980 in Chess Olympiad against another grandmaster from Iceland, Marger Pettersson. Yeah, d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3. It's a d takes c. Now the main move in this position we all know is a4, but there is a old-fashioned pawn sacrifice that is to nowadays is not known whether it's sufficient pawn sacrifice or not, but black did okay previously in this opening. So, but let's look at this. b5, e5, knight d5, a4, e6, a takes b, knight takes c3. This is also b takes c, c takes b, knight g5. Now this position was many times on various levels in many tournaments. Bishop b7, queen h5, queen d7. Now you should see how slowly Kasparov discoordinating black's pieces. Now, it's not how much power and how much pressure you put to take black apart here, but how he discoordinating black's pieces and making them totally helpless. So what happened after queen d7, bishop e2, white simply develops, h6, bishop f3, knight c6, castle, knight d8, black is protecting f7 square, knight e4 was played, black played a5. As you can tell, black has everything defended. It's very difficult to take them out right away. So white has to have some plan. So white continues improving pieces position. Bishop g5 was played. Bishop d5, rook f2 e1, knight c6, bishop h4, rook a7, queen to g4. And after queen to g4, white created threat number 1. They are threatening to play knight d6 check, and on bishop takes d6, queen takes g7, attacking the rook and then taking the d6 pawn. Now, I have to tell you this. In this position, this threat, knight d6 threat, forces black to weaken their position by playing rook h7. In other words, black is putting rook on absolutely terrible place. Now, is there a coordination between this rook and any of other piece on the board of blacks? No, absolutely not. It's just another terribly placed piece. Rook h7. Now knight d6 check was played anyway. Bishop takes d6 and bishop takes d5. Now e takes d, of course, is impossible because white is going to take on d6 with the check and win the game right away. So in this position, black played bishop e7, white played bishop e4, attacking rook, g6 is forced, and now white plays bishop f6. Now, does white have a threat? Still not. No, but white does not have a threat. Black played king f8, queen f3, but what they want to do, they start attacking now black's pieces, maybe later to play rook b1, and keeping in mind that they are playing practically with extra rook. That is totally, it's on the board, but it's absolutely has no meaning in this position. Queen f3, knight d8, and now once these pieces are so discoordinated, all white's pieces stand perfectly. Let me point. Bishop on f6, beautiful piece. Bishop on e4, supporting d5, and also keeping an eye on g-pawn. In some cases, maybe bishop takes g6, so when black moves. And rook on a1 stands very well because it does not allow black's rook to move, because a5 and rook on e1 stands well. So white opens position. That's what you do. Once all your pieces are so perfectly placed, you open position. E takes d, bishop takes d5. And it's needless to say, actually, if you gave this position to any player, any player, mediocre player, he can beat any grandmaster in this position, because this is already almost over. Black is totally helpless, and every black's piece is in a worse position. But creating this position was the art of piece coordination, how Kasparov coordinated his pieces and slowly got black in totally hopeless position. After queen f5, played by black, queen e3, you see, attacking the rook. Rook d7, rook a to d1, protecting the bishop. Bishop takes f6, ef, threatening check and take the rook. That's in case queen takes f6, also creating checkmate right now. Knight e6, and now simple move, bishop e4, attacking the queen and attacking the rook. That's not accidental that white has this move. This is just conclusion of hopeless and helpless position of black's pieces. And after bishop to e4, rook takes d1, bishop takes f5, rook takes e1, queen takes e1, g takes f, queen e5, and threatening checkmate. And after king g8, it's a very simple finesse here. Not queen b8 because knight f8, by queen g3 check first. And when king goes either direction, then queen b8 will be mating. And on g5, of course, h4. This is great example. Well, now white simply has big material advantage that was converted from big positional advantage. Great piece coordination, great effort, and obvious result. Very well played. You see how well coordinated pieces were in this game. One of the greatest positional players in the world, Tigran Petrosyan, played this game in 1968 against very well-known Grandmaster Bent Larsen. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6, a3, c5, d5, ed, cd, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop g5, castles, e3, d6, knight d2. Now, let me tell you something. This is even player like Petrosian, who loves to play the positional chess. He achieved in this position such a great coordination of the pieces that he felt that he has to open position and create contact with pieces and get it tactical, play this positional on a with a lot of tactics possible. Now, sometimes even positional players, they have to play that they have to open position and create a lot of contact, because that's the right way to play. Position is asking for it, and you see a lot of very sharp players, even Tal or Spassky or even Kasparov. They play in some positions, they play very good maneuvering chess, because that's what required in position. And this is great example of it. Actually, after bishop g5, castle e3, d6. Now, white played knight d2, h6, bishop h4, knight a6, bishop e2, knight c7, e4, and black played b5. After b5, white castles, queen d7, getting out of the pin and also protecting the b5 pawn, queen c2, rook e8, rook f e1, bishop b7. Now, if you see that your opponent puts the bishop on b7, you know that means he is not in a good shape. Bishop on b7 is just put position on a dead diagonal. b7 d5 diagonal is blocked for black. h3 a6, f4 c4, bishop f3, h5, rook a d1, and knight h7. Now here is the position. Position is closed still, but you see, let me point few things here. That's the way you should be thinking. My knight on c3 placed very well, protecting the center, supporting the center. My pawn structure, I have a majority of the pawns in the center, and my bishop placed very well, controlling the d8 square, where black cannot put their rook. My bishop on f3 supporting my center also. My rooks are placed beautifully. So white, I don't think white can improve position of their pieces. All the pieces stand perfectly in the center. All white needs in this position to create battlefield in the center, and then e5 is absolute necessity, and that's exactly what was played. D takes e. Of course, white is not going to take fe. That's not what white played it for. Knight d to e4. Now creating deadly threats. Deadly threat. Knight c5. Knight takes b7. queen takes b7, followed by d6. And you see queen is hanging, knight is hanging. In this position, black is totally hopeless. Now, just take a look at white's pieces, how they play together. Rooks on e1, d1, bishop on h4, knight is aiming everywhere, and pawn too. This is one of the finest examples of well-coordinated pieces. When knight on h7, we don't know what it's doing, and white's there. Bishop on b7 is nothing but a target, and queen on d7 will become target, and rooks cannot be activated. This is well enough. It's a lot more than we need to win the game. After knight d2 e4, queen f5 was played, and queen f2, just getting out of the pin and creating another threat, knight d6. Queen f2, rook a d8. I don't think black cares anymore about an exchange. Bishop takes d8, rook takes d8, and now queen b6, attacking two pieces. You see how quickly one of the best players in the world, Bent Larsen, at that point, he fell apart. It's not him, it's his position. His position was so bad, there is nothing he could have done. Queen c8, knight c5, attacking the bishop and preparing d6. e4 was played. Queen takes b7, ef, queen takes c8, rook takes c8, followed by d6, and bishop f8 was played. Well, obviously d7 is next. If knight e6 and d7, followed by knight b7, will be all over. Last attempt by Larsen to play bishop f8, then knight b7, simply protecting. You see, on d takes c, bishop takes knight with a check, and then black picks up the c pawn. So, but simply knight b7, and knight e6, d7, and on rook b8, oh, white could have played d8, but they played rook takes e6, and after f takes e, d8 queen, and black simply resigned. Very well. White took quite a bit of time to coordinate all the pieces towards the center. But once they played e5 and position opened, everything fell apart in 4-5 moves. And in 4-5 moves, well, they had already extra rook exchange and a bunch of threats, and game was over. Now, I want to show you the game that was played between, it was played actually very recently between Alexis Shirov and Gata Kamsky, and that was a bad example of bad judgment for white. Okay, that's the game of the match in World Cup, where Shirov was white and he was 1 point behind, so he needed to win this game. Bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castle, d4. This is very well known theoretical position. Bishop g4, bishop e3, e takes d, Well, I want to point that knight takes e4 is bad because of bishop d5. So e takes d, c takes d, knight a5, bishop c2, c5, and here white played knight c3. The more common move is d5 in this position. Knight c3, c takes d, bishop takes d4. And after knight c6, bishop b3. Well, we reached position where black could have taken on d4 and played bishop takes f3. Maybe this was okay option for black, and then try to play knight h5 and bishop g5, but white has certain pressure in the center and weak d5 square. So that's Kamsky did not do it, and in this position after bishop b3 he played simply rook c8. This is okay move. Rook e3, knight d7, knight d5. You see white has very active position. Now on bishop g5, rook c3, b4 was played, rook c4, bishop, and after, well, in this position, after rook c4, bishop takes f3, and g takes f, knight takes d4, rook takes d4. Now, let's talk about this position. White has the king open, but is it significant? No. White has dominating knight on d5, and with the next move f4, actually that's what happened after a5, f4, bishop h6, queen g4, very strong move. Queen g4, the idea of move queen g4 actually is very interesting, that what black tries to relieve the pressure by knight f6 exchanging powerful knight on d5, but after queen g4, knight f6 is not possible because queen takes c8 strangely wins the game, and if queen takes queen, knight e7 check, winning a lot of material. So in this position, rook went to c5, and that's the position I want to talk about. If white simply went rook a to d1, they would have had a great advantage. Just to play this positionally, rook d1, and try to maybe later play f5 and try f4, and just to try to build the pressure on black's position. Instead, I don't like at all what Shirov did. What Shirov did in this position, he went pawn hunting. So he gave up his great centralized position of the pieces for winning a pawn. Knight e3. Now remember this position and compare it to the position we're going to get in few moves, and you will see day and night difference. Knight e3, knight f6, queen f3, queen a8, attacking e4 pawn, well, actually putting pressure on e4 pawn. Now queen a8, rook a d1, g6, and now white went knight c4, and after a4, knight b6, queen c6, knight takes a4. Now, white won a pawn, that's true. But what did white just do? They went with a centralized position from d5 with a knight. To win a pawn, they put the knight on a4. How can that be recommended? I would criticize, if I had my student, if he was like rated 16 or 1700 for doing this. But even grandmasters, sometimes they have subjective judgment, and he was probably very nervous playing this game. It was too much pressure on Shirov that he had to win, and somehow his judgment was altered. And after knight takes a4, rook c1, rook takes b4. He won second pawn, but after rook takes d1, bishop takes d1, queen to c1, you can see that f4 pawn will be gone, e5, d takes e, f takes e, queen g5 check, king f1, and queen takes e5. Yes, white does have two connected pass pawns, but their king is in bad positions. Zero coordination between pieces. Knight on a4 is terrible. Bishop on d1 is bad. When black's pieces are well coordinated on a king side and they can go after rook e8, they will just simply have very strong position. King f1, queen takes e5, h3, defending pawn. Now bishop d2. Rook c4, rook d8, bishop b3, king g7. Now you can tell white does have extra pawn, but black is dominating in the center. It's a dramatic change, and well, I think it's just because position in the match was in Skamsky's favor. They soon agreed to a draw. Rook c4, rook d8, bishop b3, and after king g7, king g2 was played, queen g5 check, queen g3, queen d5 check. They simply repeated position and game was drawn. Well, you will see the last thing you should do when you have dominating piece position. You shouldn't go pawn hunting in that. You should build the pressure, keep pieces coordinating together, and play combined effort wherever pieces can be used the best. Not go pawn hunting. Now, this game also played by Kasparov, and I love this game. How quickly, from theoretical position, how quickly, in a matter of 3-4 moves, from quiet position, well, coordinated effort of pieces can create mating attack. That was played by Kasparov in 1980, also in Olympiad. d4 against Yugoslavian Grandmaster Marjanovic. Knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6, g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, bishop e7, castle, castle, d5. Now, this is very well known pawn sacrifice. ed, knight h4, c6, c takes d, knight takes d5. There's a lot of theory about this pawn sacrifice. Knight f5. It's till now it's still unclear whether white has advantage or not. Knight c3, knight c3, d5, e4, bishop f6, e takes d, c takes d. Now, we got the position where black has simply extra pawn, but you see, knight on c7 is very unnaturally placed. Knight on b8 is not developed. White is a lot better developed. Bishop f4, knight a6. Black is still trying to hang on to extra pawn, because on knight c6 they thought maybe white can take on c7 and take on d5. So they tried to hang on to an extra pawn. Knight b to a6, rook e1, queen d7. And who may think that in a very few moves white is gonna develop devastating kingside attack? Bishop h3, threatening, simply check. King h8. Knight e4. You see one more piece coming to the king side where black's king is. So obviously you cannot take because queen is on pre. After knight e4, black played bishop takes b2. Now white is threatening to take on f6. Well, of course, bishop has to move. It might as well take on b2. Now, knight g5, and all of a sudden we see here too many pieces on the king side. Queen c6. They trying to, on queen h5, to play queen g6. So after queen c6, knight e7 was played, attacking the queen, and after knight e7 there is no defense. Queen f6, knight takes h7. Why is this possible? Now, of course, king takes h7, queen h5, check will just win the queen. When no piece can help, no piece of blacks can help, white pieces are quickly demolishing black's position. So on queen c6, knight e7, queen f6, knight takes h7, queen d4 was played, queen h5, g6, queen h4, and when bishop took the rook, it's simple, mate with knight f6, king g7, queen h6 check, king takes, bishop g5 checkmate. This is not tactics. No, this is great strategy of coordinating and jumping on a helpless king when black's king had absolutely no protection, no defense at all. Now, I want to show you one game that with the missed opportunities and with a great play by white. That game was played a long time ago in 1947, but between two very, very famous players. Was played between Paul Keres and Vasily Smyslov. The game was played in the memorial in famous Russian chess player Michael Chigorin memorial in Moscow. Okay, let's look at this game. Keres was white, d4, d5, c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, c takes d, c takes d, knight f3, knight c6, bishop f4, e6, e3. This is the still opening part. Bishop e7, bishop d3, castles, rook c1, b6, white castled, bishop b7. So this is symmetrical type of position, but white's advantage is they have better bishop than b7 bishop. They have a lot better light square bishop. And bishop b7, knight e5, knight b4, bishop b1, knight d7, queen h5, g6, queen h6, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, bishop is still remaining bad, bishop f6 and f4. It's a very strong move. Bishop takes e5, f takes e, and f5. Well, here we reached position that according to all the rules of strategic play, white has big advantage here. What white did, white went knight b5, rook c8, knight d6, rook takes c1, rook takes c1. Black's position is very bad here. Queen e7, h4, bishop a6, and all it takes in this overwhelming position, I would say totally winning position for white, to make one bad move and the game cannot be won anymore. Well, let's talk about this position. Rook on c1 much better than rook on f8. Knight on d6 better than knight on b4. And not to mention bishop on b1 can be very powerful, and bishop on a6 does practically nothing. The correct way of playing this position would have been a3, and after knight d3, bishop takes d3, bishop takes d3, and then b3. Now black, there is nothing black can do. White's pieces are very active. White can even go queen g5, go to endgame, and bring the rook on c7. And coordinated effort of knight and the rook and owning the c-file will be quickly decisive. But what Keres did, he had a great plan, but he made one bad move, h5, and after this white cannot win the game anymore. Queen h4, very strong move, was totally missed by Keres, and now rook c7 is not good. Keres thought queen can never move because of rook c, because there will be a perpetual check. See? And what white did instead, they went a3. Now black goes knight c6, and again knight cannot be taken because of the perpetual check. And after knight c6, well, actually here white has no advantage because they have practically no move that is helpful for them. And queen on h4 is very powerful, so white simply took the knight, and after queen e1 check, they just agreed to a draw. It's bad judgment by white to go after the to go h5 and to allow black any activity with the queen h4 move. So we have now very clear picture based on the material we worked on. So when you have your pieces very actively placed and you see they work together, there will always be combinations, there will always be tactics, and it's up to you to find them and to get the best of it. But what is very important to know, that you have to make these pieces work together. place them very actively, and you just saw how much you can accomplish with pieces that work together. Good luck.